welcome, Kristen.
Hi, thank you.
Kristen is one of 32 authors that will be at the Spring Book Bash on April 25th in downtown Greer, South Carolina at the Randall House. We'll have 32 authors, around 50 genres, and around 140 book titles, with authors coming in from 8 different states. So, Kristen is joining us from Tennessee. Uh, Please share with us about your books and what you're bringing to the event.
Okay, so I'm bringing the first two books in my Valaraii Rising trilogy. Think Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, because that's sort of where my inspiration was. But my own world, a lot
Mhm.
more females, strong females, warriors. But the first book is called The Forgotten.
Mhm.
And this one is gives you a lot of the backstory. It opens with two dwarf brothers. They're fraternal twins, Finn and Quinn, and they are running from these vampire-like monsters, and they stumble into a very long forgotten tomb that holds a warrior in it, and they don't realize it. They're just trying to get away from the monsters, and they awaken the warrior, and that starts them and their clan on an incredible journey they never thought that they would go on. And the warrior's name is Sile. It's what their grandfather called her because it sort of sounds like silly, and he was making a joke calling an elf Sile, although she's not an elf. So she and the twins and their uncle and their dwarf clan in this are trying to fight off the dark who have come to exterminate the dwarves because they threaten the reign of the dark. And in this book, they fight off the first assault on them, but they know it's not over. And then book two came out this fall, and that one is called The Lost. And in The Lost, they are actually going to try and find many of their friends and family and people, dwarves, humans, and elves, who have been stolen by the dark and lost in the dark. And they are going on a journey to try and find them and get them back. And one particular person by the name of Oron, who features prominently as an ally in the Forgotten. And so each of my titles go with something, a concept in the book. So the Forgotten, Sile is the Forgotten. She was entombed, alive, but entombed in this mountain and forgotten for several hundred years, and nobody even knew she was there. I mean, the twins just stumbled on her tomb and found her and awakened her. And then in The Lost, they're going after their friends, people who've been stolen, and they also turn out they're finding races that the Dark Lord had tried to destroy, but they're finding remnants of these lost groups. And so my third book will come out this fall, and it's called The Dead. And that's because there are those who are thought to have been dead who come back to fight in the final battle.
Ah. So,
And then, of course, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so you've got the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, two of the three will be at the spring event.
Yes. Yes.
Um, how did you get to the point of how did you come up with these kind of ideas?
Okay, so in middle school, I read The Hobbit by Tolkien, and it wasn't my speed. I just thought it was too childish for me. I was too adult for that. I do appreciate and like it now, but that. And then when I was in high school as a freshman, I had an English teacher who said that we had to read 1,200 words 1,200 pages independently, and I can't remember if it was in a 9 weeks or a semester, but
Mhm.
outside of class, stuff that we weren't actually reading for class. And I chose Les Mis because it was a little over 1,200 pages, and I was like, done. Read this. I'm done. And she told me I couldn't read it, that she thought I would like something else better, and she gave me The Fellowship of the Ring, the first book by the Lord of the Rings series. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, I didn't really like The Hobbit. I don't think this is not going to be for me. And she said, well, you can't read Les Mis if you don't at least try this first.
Okay.
So I begrudgingly took it, and I ended up reading the entire series in one weekend. And I was absolutely furious that the book was over because I didn't want to leave the world that Tolkien had created. I loved it so much.
Hmm.
I started writing god awful fan fiction. But creating a character that was me put into that world. Because one of the things I did notice in the book was it was all of the strong characters, the warriors, the ones who went and did things, Gandalf the wizard, Aragorn the king, even the hobbits, they were all males. There weren't any strong female characters. There was Galadriel, but she wasn't a warrior. She wasn't a strong, powerful. She had prophecy and could see. I wanted an action hero person that was like me, and so that's who my character became. And then forward to 2020, and it's COVID, and we're in lockdown, and my beautiful daughter finds my journals and is looking through them, and she's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and she's like, Mom, you might want to do something with this. These could be pretty good. And so it kind of got me back and inspired because I had all of this time. And my main character, Sile, who's the warrior who's been entombed at the beginning of the first book, she does have, the brown curly hair and blue eyes, but she is sarcastic at points. So that's about the extent that we're the same. She was more like the idealized me. This is what I wanted to be back when I was in middle school and high school. That strong, I could kick your butt across 50 continents if I wanted to, kind of, warrior person. Nobody's going to mess with me. And so she was like this idealized version of who I wanted to be. And during COVID, I just started messing with it, writing, and it took on its own life and became my own realm and my own world and my own characters. And my nephew, who actually is at the Naval Academy, he read it for me because I couldn't get anybody to read it in my family. My husband and my daughter, who loved me, where they were always had something they were doing. So he said, well, I'll read it. So we went to the beach, and he sat down on the beach, and he read it page by page. And I had printed it out and hole punched the pages and put it in a little binder. So, it was like a little book, and he read it, and I wasn't done with it at that point yet. And I said, well, what do you think? He's like, oh my gosh. That was the best prologue I've ever read. That was so I loved it. And I kept thinking, well, yeah, he loves me. So I am favorite aunt. Right. That's what I am in his phone, favorite aunt. So, maybe he's being a little, over the, but so we were talking about it at dinner a little bit later, and my husband asked him what he thought. And he was like, I really like it. Her characters are fun. It's so sarcastic in points, which is so Aunt Kristen. And he said, and she writes some of the best battle scenes and fight scenes that I've ever read. And my husband puts his fork down and looks at him and goes, are you kidding me? And he said, no, you can just see what's happening. It's really good how she writes them. And my uncle looks at me and he goes, and you don't like it when somebody gets embarrassed on TV, let alone gets into a fist fight, and you're writing, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't have to watch it. I'm just, because I am that person Like he and Emma watch The Walking Dead. I prefer not to. I'm not into like zombies and stuff. So he just couldn't believe. He says, I can't believe that. But um, so then ended up being able to get it published, and the first two books have come out. And book three, I'm just finished. I just got an email a little earlier from the people, the publisher I'm working with, and they have my clean copy ready for me to go through and make sure it looks like I want before they send it off to the printer. So that should be
Nice.
the third one.
So cool. And to me that's so much fun.
Yeah.
When you go from fanfic to your own writing to where
Yeah.
it's no longer, oh, this is, someone else's writing that I'm just adding on to. You're creating your whole own world. And so we've got the trilogy done. Do we
Mm-hmm.
know where we're going after the trilogy? Do we have
Well,
anything in mind?
yes and no. I'm working on some prequel stuff
Hmm.
because it was suggested to me because there's so much backstory that sometimes when I was first going through the editing, some of the notes were you obviously know the history, but remember your readers aren't in your brain. So you might need to give a little more, because when
Mhm.
they would ask me questions, I would say, oh, well, because this and this has happened, but it's before.
Mhm.
So they mentioned that it might be really cool. And some of my students who've actually read my books and really said they loved them, of course, they may have been trying to get an A, but, they really seemed to like them. They had mentioned it'd be cool to see some prequels. So I've started working on that, and I've got 10 chapters, and I like it, but I don't because
Mhm.
I mean, I know the history, but it feels like there's so much time in between the different events they're talking about to try and get them. Anyway, so I like what I've done so far, but I don't know where to go with it. And
Mhm.
then I have a journal that I started with an idea last year when I was just trying to figure some things out and just had an idea pop in my head. And it's not a part, it doesn't have anything to do with my trilogy, and it's called The Demon Queen. And I like
Oh.
it. And I've really worked with that one. And that one's really flowing. So we'll see what we do. One of my dear friends mentioned, well, maybe if you did the prequel like short stories, like you did like a little story about
Mhm.
this episode, and then you have another story, and then another short story, and instead of trying to tie them all together, and
Yeah.
she said maybe that's the issue that you're trying
Mhm.
to wend them all together, and there's so many years
Yeah.
of this history that's become the issue is trying to make them all fit and go together when you have this episode and then you have this episode. And so
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at those two things.
That would be awesome, and do it
Mm-hmm.
to where it's not written as a full length novel, but short
Mm-hmm.
stories so that you can get the backstory, and you could almost have that as your title, the backstories of, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah,
and that way it would be easier because you're not trying to, when you time hop like that, it's very difficult
yes,
to tie them together unless the story is about time hopping.
yeah.
Um, it's
Well,
very
and
difficult.
yeah, and that's been my issue because like the main character is from my trilogy. It's her backstory. She is an immortal, so she is alive at these different. So she's a constant, but
Hmm.
it's time hopping from her at this point to then she comes here and she meets this character that you then see in the trilogy. But then there's this time before she meets the next character, and what all is going on, and it feels like trying to fill in the gaps makes it like mundane. And then they had
Yeah.
breakfast, and then they went on a hike, that kind of
Yeah.
a feeling, as opposed to, because I don't know, I know where she ends up because she got to the
Right.
trilogy, so it doesn't feel like there's as much conflict, which,
Yeah.
as we all know, that's the key to a story, is the conflict and how you surpass it, and
Mm-hmm.
all of so that's what I'm toying with right now, is maybe I turn them into some little short stories,
Mm-hmm.
and have those episodes as short stories, as opposed to trying to make it another novel, or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So you had mentioned your students. So
yes.
you have a 9 to 5 job versus writing as your primary job. So what
Yes.
else do you do?
I am a high school teacher. I teach in what's called a school of choice, which is a public school, but it's also not anybody's home school.
Mm-hmm.
So you can apply to go there, and you get picked in a lottery. And so then if you get picked, you're in, and you don't pay tuition. It
Okay.
is a public school, so we still get the federal and state funding. We're not private. And I have been there since 2002. And
Oh.
I teach high school, which everybody who's ever met me is like, why don't you teach the little kids? And I said, because I don't have the patience, and I would kill them before the day was out. Um, so I'm with the big kids, and I love it. I have loved my job ever since I started teaching. And I teach currently sophomore English,
Hmm.
AP Psychology, AP US History, and AP English Language and Composition. So,
Wow, that's a variety.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm dual certified in social studies and English, and so since we're a smaller school, I do double duty. I'm in both departments, and depending on how many students take my electives, and so how many classes of those electives I have, well, they call the APs electives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, depending on that, depends on if I'm technically more social studies one year or more English one year.
Okay.
But
So
those
which,
those are I teach.
so which do you prefer?
Well, my students tell me. I think social studies and literature actually work real well together,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
because if you're looking at a poet, or you're looking at a genre, or you're looking at an author or an essayist,
Mm-hmm.
knowing the background, knowing the context, knowing what's going on in that particular, in the world at that time, but also
Yeah.
locally for the author at that time, knowing all of that really helps add to the depth and the language of what you're reading.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of students have told me in the past that my English classes feel like a social studies class whenever we start something, because they're
Mm.
learning so much about the background before we actually look at the work that goes with it. Whether they're essays, poems, a novel, short stories, whatever. They're like, man, we learned so much about the background on this. And I'm like, well, what do you think about it? And they're like, well, actually, it makes us understand the stuff better.
Yeah.
So I like them both. Um, I love having my kids get lost in a book and watching
Mm-hmm.
them get lost in a book. And it's why I really try and pay attention to what they're reading.
Mm.
Um, because it interests me to find out what it is that speaks to them.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to them about it when they have free reading time in class, and they can pull out any book they want to look at, especially in my English classes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really funny the year that The Forgotten came out. I was having free reading in my 10th grade English class, and I looked up, and just as I was due, just and I was getting up and I was walking around seeing who was reading what, and I look up, and one of my students is reading my book.
Oh.
Yeah. And normally, I go up to them and I'm like, well, tell me about what you're reading. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you like this author? But I didn't know what to say because, I mean, I'm the author. So do I put my kid on the spot like that and be like, so how do you feel about your teacher's book? Don't worry about your grade here. Give me the truth. That kind of thing. It felt really weird. And I was kind of trying to figure this out, and the young lady looked up and caught my eye, and she grinned,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Oh, Miss Johnson, I love this. I'm almost done. So when is book 2 coming out?" And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, I'm so glad." She goes, "Yeah, I want to read book 2." And I said, "Well, book 2 will come out next fall." "No, no, 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 no. Can't you make it the spring?" It's like, "Well, no, that's up to the publisher, dear." So, but she loved it. So that was a lot of fun. And then I had another student come up to me who is just a spitfire. I love this young lady. And she came up to me and she stood in front of my desk. She had her hands on her hips. And I looked up and I was like, "Oh, what did I do to this child today?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm just so mad I can't talk." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she said, "First off, you need to have book 2 out soon because this is ridiculous. I need to know what happens." I was like, "Oh, well, that's okay. Well, I can't control that. That's the publisher. So, okay." But and secondly, obviously, you said first off, so there's a second thing. She goes, "And I hope you don't have a love thing going between Taryn and Silly because I can't stand Taryn. He is just the most, self-absorbed dwarf ever." And I'm like, I said, "Well, people can change, characters can change." And she says, "Well, it's going to take an awful lot for me to like him." And I was like, "Okay, well, thanks for telling me." So it's been kind of fun
Mm-hmm.
getting more feedback. And the high school book club that's at my school actually read book 1 and invited me to their book club meeting, which was
Oh.
even more interesting because they were talking about it and the things that they really liked, the things that they couldn't wait for in book 2 to find out, the things they didn't like,
Mm.
which I thought I might be more offended, but it was interesting just to really hear and have them be so grown up about it because here I am, all of the students I had taught or were currently teaching as we were, save one who was a freshman, and I don't normally have freshmen in my classes. And so I didn't know that particular student. I've had her since then, and she's fabulous. But at that time, so it was just that was really interesting to have that kind of feedback and to have them asking me questions and to talk about it and so forth. And they did it again for book 2, so that
No.
was really cool. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of it though, I think the what they don't like really depends on how they deliver it.
Yeah.
Because if it's, "Hey, this is why I didn't care for whatever
Hmm.
section." And I think delivery has to do a lot with that. Um, where it's easier to take the negative feedback when you know that there's all these other parts too that they did like and they can't wait for certain
Yeah.
things to come. So it's not a bashing of the book.
Mhm.
It's actual constructive feedback, which I think is fabulous. And to have your students doing that, that is
Mhm.
just wonderful. And that also means that you write so that your students can actually read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's
Yeah.
student friendly.
Yeah, because there's no way I want to stand up in front of a class of high schoolers after if they have read something in my book that would not be, school appropriate, because I would hear about it. I mean, I truthfully would, and they would be
Yeah.
happy to embarrass me.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, high school students in a heartbeat. They're there for
Well,
you.
oh, definitely. Oh, I love, but that's what's so much fun about them. One of my students, the young lady who I saw reading my book in my class, she actually, there is in book two, because she gave me the idea. So the opening of book two is a guide to the peoples and places of MithTerra, which is my realm. And
Okay.
so, and she was like, that would be really interesting if you kind of put through there what all the different kingdoms are, and the realms, and the dwarves, and the elves, and the human races, and some of your main characters. If you just kind of had that down, and so I was like, oh, okay. So I put that in there, and I thanked her in the book.
Mhm.
She's so excited. She was like, when the book two came out, she was showing people, look, I'm in book two. Right, that's me. It was so
I I
cute.
made it in book 2.
I made it. Miss Johnson actually mentioned me specifically, and I love that. I love that she got so excited about it. But it was a good idea. My publisher was like, "Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You should. That's perfect." And so I did that in the Lost, and so they've given me great feedback.
That is
It's been
awesome. So, do
yeah.
you see yourself retiring from teaching and continuing on with writing?
Right now, I'm doing both,
Mhm.
and it's okay. I would love more time to write, but I love working with my students, and to be honest, they give me a lot of inspiration.
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and they're some of my biggest supporters on my social media platforms. They love
Mm.
to respond to me, and they love to tell me what they think, and they show up at my local book signings. And I
Nice.
had told them I was going to be doing this, and they said, "Oh, where is it?" And I said, "Well, it'll be in Greer, South Carolina." And they said,
Where?
"Oh, we can't. That's a little far away, Miss Johnson." And I was like, "Well, I know, but I need to get out there a little bit and do some." Well, when are you doing another one here? Well, I've got that in the works. So those will be coming up more kind of summer wise, and the fall, and we'll do another one when book three comes out and so forth. And they're like, so they always. I have a good group that always shows up at my book signings to
Nice.
say hi, and they'll be like, we already bought your book, Miss Johnson. Yes, I know. I signed it at the last one, or I
Yeah.
signed it at the other one. I got that. And then if people are walking around, they'll be like, "Oh, have you seen her book? They're awesome. You need to get." So there's some of my personal. I love it.
That
It's
is so
really
cool. I absolutely love it. It is so
yeah,
great when you see young people that are so into supporting an author
yeah,
and going, hey, you know, we read the book and we
yeah,
like the author and buy her book. And
yeah. Although
that
I
is
think
so
it
cool.
might be a little aggressive sometimes, because there's these you have these poor people being run assaulted, not assaulted, that's the wrong
Yeah.
word, but confronted maybe by these hordes of teenagers.
Enthusiastically encouraged to buy your book.
Yeah. You want to go to that one? That one over there. Yes. Yeah. They're a lot of
Love
fun.
it. Well, this has
Yeah.
been so much fun.
Cool. Yes. Yeah.
I have enjoyed getting to know you. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your day and out of your schedule to share with
Yeah.
us about your books. And I look forward to seeing you at the end of April.
Thank you. I look forward to coming. That'll be awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yep.